On September 13, 2007, in Zhongkang Village, Tainan County, Taiwan, farmer Wang Jinlai and his wife Keiyu Mei woke up early, preparing for another day of hard work. A recent typhoon had wreaked havoc, leaving devastating consequences on the land they had cultivated for years. When the couple entered their fruit orchard, the scene before them was heartbreaking. Mango trees that had once flourished now lay scattered everywhere, branches and leaves broken and fallen. A year's worth of labor might have been reduced to nothing. However, the local government's promise of disaster relief subsidies brought a glimmer of hope to the farming couple. The two bent their heads and silently cleaned up, step by step, trying to salvage what they could. But while they were busy working, the sound of a car engine could be heard from afar. Yume stopped working and gently placed her hoe on the ground. She looked up toward the road, her eyes filled with curiosity mixed with hope. "It might be people from the government coming to survey the damage," she told her husband, her voice tinged with excitement. "You continue cleaning up here. I'll go check the situation," she said, brushing the dirt off her sleeves and walking quickly toward the motorcycle parked at the edge of the orchard. The engine roared to life, and then Yumei disappeared around the bend, leaving Jinlai alone in the fruit orchard. Who could have thought that such a simple decision, going to see who was coming, would become a fateful turning point? For the next few hours, Jinlai continued working alone, occasionally looking toward the road, expecting to see Yumei return. When the sun rose high, he decided to drive his small truck home for lunch, still believing his wife might have returned first and was preparing the meal. But when he stepped into the familiar house, the unusually quiet atmosphere signaled that something was wrong. His son, sitting in the living room, looked up with surprise. "Why are you home alone, Dad?" "Where's Mom?" That simple question hit him like a bolt of lightning. Jinlai suddenly realized he hadn't seen Yumei since early morning. He hurriedly searched for his phone to call his wife, but then discovered her phone was still at home. At that moment, an uneasy feeling began to creep into the man's heart. After lunch, when there was still no sign of his wife by evening, Jinlai couldn't sit still. He called his son, and the two split up to search in the direction Yumei had gone. Not long after, they discovered his wife's motorcycle on the small road behind the fruit orchard. The bike had fallen to the ground, keys still inserted, with a long scratch mark on the ground where the bike had been dragged. Jinlai realized something was seriously wrong and quickly asked for help from the villagers to organize a search operation in the mountains. Despite the hot sun, they actively searched every corner of the fruit orchard but found no trace of Yumei. Having no choice, he finally decided to report to the police for help. Next, police and villagers launched a large-scale search operation, but still found no results. When everyone was nearly desperate, on the evening of September 15th, 2 days later, police received a report from villagers saying that a corpse was floating in the pond of Xiaolun village. Police immediately arrived at the scene, and the body recovery was conducted carefully. When the corpse was brought to shore, the family with red, swollen eyes confirmed this was indeed Yumei, the woman who had gone missing 2 days earlier. As police were preparing to finish the body recovery work, a sudden shout pierced the quiet night air. "There's something else at the bottom of the water!" A police officer had discovered the vague silhouette of another object at the bottom of the pond. Immediately, a diving team was called back into action. When the mysterious object was brought up, a wave of shock spread throughout the scene. It was a male corpse. Initially, finding Yumei's body had already made the case complex enough, but who could have expected that at the bottom of this seemingly ordinary pond lay another mystery? The first question that came to everyone's mind was, who was this man? Did he have any connection to Yumei? Were these two separate cases, or was there some connection between them? Both bodies were quickly taken to the morgue for autopsy. The preliminary forensic report revealed the first details about the male victim. He was about 45 years old, wearing a white polo shirt and dark-colored dress pants. After examination, police confirmed he was not a local villager. The most important discovery was that the thyroid cartilage on both sides of the victim's throat showed clear signs of fracture. The experienced forensic examiner confirmed this was a typical sign of strangulation. However, Despite signs of strangulation, his cause of death was not suffocation but drowning, as there was water accumulation in his lungs. When examining Yumei's body, the forensic examiner also found similar injuries to her neck. Her cause of death was also determined to be drowning. What made investigators even more confused was that the time of death for both victims was determined to be very close to each other. Were these two people killed by the same perpetrator? Or were these two different cases that had a strange coincidence in timing and location? After obtaining basic information about the victims, the investigation team shifted focus to analyzing the crime scene. The small pond where the two bodies were discovered was located in an extremely remote location. Surrounding it were lush fruit orchards and scattered farmhouses, creating a peaceful but completely isolated landscape. This was not a place people frequently visited. The road leading to the pond was winding and treacherous, with sharp turns between mountain slopes. Only local residents or those truly familiar with the terrain could easily find this place. Except during mango season, when farmers needed to go to the orchards for harvest, there was basically no reason for anyone to appear in this area. This very remoteness and difficulty of access made investigators realize that the perpetrator must be someone familiar with the terrain, capable of moving through the area without being detected. And immediately, their suspicious gaze turned to one person. That was Jinlai, Yumei's husband. When investigators analyzed carefully, they discovered unusual points. First, the entire story about Yumei's disappearance was based solely on Jinlai's one-sided account. No other witnesses could verify these details. Second, the appearance of the male corpse in the same pond as Yumei made police suspicious about the relationship between this couple. Could Yumei have been having a secret relationship with the unknown man? And if so, could Jinlai's discovery of this truth have driven him to jealous rage and led him to deal with both people? Most importantly, Jinlai was a native farmer, born and raised in this area. He knew every road, every hidden corner of the land like the back of his hand. Finding a remote place like that pond to dispose of bodies would not be difficult for him. Moreover, he could completely commit the crime and move through the area without anyone knowing. When indirect evidence gradually focused on Jinlai, the investigation team decided to conduct a formal interrogation. In the interrogation room, Jinlai sat facing the police, his face weary after days of anguished searching for his wife. The first question was asked straightforwardly. Why did you let your wife go check the situation alone that day? Why didn't you go with her? Jinlai, with a somewhat tired voice but still trying to remain calm, explained, "The road up there is very narrow. My small truck would have difficulty moving. I was worried that if I drove up and met another vehicle coming the opposite way, it would be very difficult to avoid each other. My wife going by motorcycle would be more flexible, so I asked her to go first to check the situation." This explanation, while seemingly reasonable, was not enough to completely eliminate the suspicion in the investigators' minds. "So, why did you only start worrying and looking for your wife after she had been gone for 4 hours? During that time, you even calmly ate a full lunch." This was precisely the key point that made police most suspicious. A normal husband, when his wife goes out for too long without returning, would at least feel worried and go looking earlier. The fact that Jinlai could still sit and eat lunch normally while his wife had been missing for nearly 4 hours really didn't seem like the natural reaction of a husband who loved his wife. Although Jinlai tried to provide explanations for each of his actions, the police were still not completely convinced. The investigation continued to go deeper. During the process of examining the family's financial documents, police discovered that Jinlai had previously purchased several life insurance policies for Yumei. Although the insurance amount was not large, in the current context, this detail became extremely suspicious. Could this have been a premeditated plan? After all, this method was not uncommon in similar cases. Pay insurance premiums in advance, plan thoroughly, fake an outsider's crime, then report to police to remove suspicion from oneself. When these suspicions gradually emerged, Jinlai, who was originally honest and simple, gradually transformed from a victim to the police's prime suspect. However, the turning point of the matter came quickly. During the inquiry process, villagers unanimously reported that the Jinlai couple had deep affection for each other over decades, recognized as a model couple in the village. As for the life insurance policy, it had long since expired due to non-payment. At that time, Jinlai had reluctantly bought a few policies to save face with friends, without any intentional motive. In addition to villagers testifying for Jinlai, the wife's family also unanimously supported him, stating that the Wang family were honest farmers who could never do such a thing. Thus, as the investigation progressed, police also temporarily ruled out suspicion of Jinlai. But the question remained, if not Jinlai, then who? When the investigation into Yume reached a dead end, the other male victim became the key to solving the case. Since no identification documents were found on the victim, they took his fingerprints. Unfortunately, no matching results were found in the database. To find a breakthrough, police decided to rely on the power of the media. They published the physical characteristics of the male victim as well as the clothing he was wearing. But several days passed without any leads. When police were feeling stuck, they decided to directly drain the pond. They suspected the victim's personal belongings, especially his phone, might have fallen to the bottom. After some struggle, the pond water was drained, but aside from a few rocks that had been used to weigh down the corpses, no valuable clues were found. Police initially wanted to find traces of the perpetrator through surveillance cameras, but the crime scene was in a remote location, and the village entrances and exits had no surveillance equipment installed. According to Jinlai's testimony, he only heard the sound of a car engine and couldn't even clearly see the vehicle's type or color. When everyone was at a dead end, the case saw a new lead. 7 days after the incident occurred, police received a phone call. On the other end was a woman who anxiously said that the description of the male victim in the news, as well as that white polo shirt, looked exactly like her missing husband. The woman quickly came to the police station. After verification, police finally confirmed the identity of the male victim found in the pond. He was Chen Jinzhong, 45 years old, a landscaping businessman. Jinzhong's wife described to police that her husband often traveled everywhere, designing and managing landscape projects for clients. On the day the incident occurred, that is, the morning of September 13th, Jinzhong told his wife he would go to Tainan City to survey a forest plot. When he left home that day, he was wearing exactly that white polo shirt and dark-colored dress pants. Initially, the family thought he was busy with business negotiations, and when they couldn't contact him, they didn't pay much attention. But 2 days passed with still no news. It wasn't until they saw the news announcement that his wife immediately recognized it as the type of shirt her husband was wearing when he left home. At this point in the case, although Jinzhong's identity had been confirmed, new questions also arose. A landscaping businessman and a fruit farmer. How did these two people end up dying in the same pond at the same time? After confirming the male victim's identity, police immediately launched a deep investigation into victim Jinzhong. They traced his phone signals, step by step reconstructing the victim's activity trail on his last day alive. According to cell tower records, at 6:12 a.m. on the day of the incident, the mobile phone signal appeared on Jiankang Road, Anping District, Tainan City. Half an hour later, it moved to Wenhua Road, Yongkang District, Tainan County. Around 8:10 a.m., the signal began moving toward Nangxi Township, Tainan County, arriving at the Ebony Plantation area at number 680, Nangxi Township at 9 a.m., where the signal remained for nearly an hour before leaving around 10:30 a.m., instead of returning to Tainan City Center when reaching Route 381 in Nanhua Township territory. The signal suddenly turned back and moved toward Shanweiliao in Zhongkeng Village. The final signal was received at number 384-4, Zhongkeng area, near the Wang family's mango orchard. The time was recorded as 10:36 a.m., after which the signal completely disappeared. This timing exactly coincided with when Yume went missing. Following the phone signal traces, police found Jinzhong's car in the city. When checking the trunk, police discovered two important items: an aerial map of Nanxi County and a photocopy of a forest land lease contract. Through these items, police confirmed that Jinzhong was indeed negotiating forest land business at the time. Based on these clues, police speculated that Jinzhong might have met with business partners on Wenhua Road that day. then switched to the partner's vehicle to go together to Nanxi County to survey the forest land. Police suspected that on the return trip, Jinzhong might have been murdered by his business partner and his body dumped in the pond near Zhongkang village. As for why Yume was dragged into this, they would probably need to find the perpetrator to solve this mystery. The case development up to this point was basically clear. The next problem was finding Jinzhong's business partner. And the breakthrough was the vehicle they used that day. Although there were no surveillance cameras near the crime scene, from Tainan City to Nanxi County, surveillance cameras along the route were very comprehensive. Police investigated 19 intersections, analyzed over 80 hours of video frame by frame, and screened 56 suspicious vehicles from more than 30,000 cars. After further investigation, a silver-white passenger van finally caught police attention, as its movement trajectory almost completely matched Jinzhong's phone signals. Police immediately looked up the vehicle owner's information. This car was registered under the name of a woman called Zhang Shujuan. However, on that day, it wasn't her driving, but a male. Police dug deeper and discovered Shujuan's boyfriend was named Shiming, 38 years old. This person had a criminal record. He had previously been sentenced to 10 years in prison for drug dealing and illegal gun possession, and had been released just 6 months before the incident. Additionally, he had 2 close friends, Jiang Wuzhe, 26 years old, and Chen Junjie, 33 years old. These 2 were very obedient to Shiming. All 3 not only had similar criminal records, but also jointly operated a bar business. After obtaining these clues, police immediately took action. They successfully arrested all 3 at the bar they operated by tracking the silver-white passenger van. At the same time, police collected soil samples from the vehicle. After testing, the soil composition completely matched the soil from the pond where the incident occurred. During interrogation, Shiming appeared the calmest. He paid no attention to police questioning, insisting he was only an intermediary responsible for brokering forest land transactions. After the business deal failed, everyone was unhappy and parted ways. Wuzhe claimed complete innocence, saying he was just the driver who drove them to see the forest land. Junji remained silent throughout. Seeing the lack of cooperation in the investigation, police directly presented surveillance video and soil samples from the car. Faced with this evidence, Wuzhe and Junji's psychological defenses finally collapsed, and they confessed to the entire sequence of events. The cause of the case turned out to be a supposedly profitable forest land transaction. As mentioned earlier, the 3 suspects jointly operated a bar. When Jinzhong was alive, he often brought clients to this bar. During one client meeting, he became acquainted with the 3 people in this case. By chance, Shiming learned that Wuzhe's family in Nanxi County had contracted a eucalyptus forest plot. Due to poor management, they urgently needed to transfer it. Wuzhe's mother offered a transfer fee of 6 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 200,000 US dollars, saying this was the family price. After learning about this, Shiming wanted to do this business, but the problem was he knew nothing about forest land. Therefore, he decided to find someone knowledgeable to evaluate it. That person was Jinzhong, who worked in landscape business. After the 2 met, Shiming, based on the seller's verbal description plus some knowledge he temporarily searched online, exaggerated the forest plot to the extreme. After hearing the introduction, Jinzhong made simple calculations based on the provided data and said the forest plot's market value could reach 20 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 665,000 USD. Hearing this figure, Shiming was extremely excited. He calculated in his mind, buy for 6 million Taiwan dollars, sell for 20 million Taiwan dollars, minus costs would net 14 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 465,000 USD profit. For Shiming, who desperately needed money, this was definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the morning of September 13th, the 4 men drove to Nanxi County to conduct a field survey. When they arrived at the forest plot, Jinzhong got out and began careful inspection. But the condition of this forest plot quickly made him frown. The trees grew unevenly, planting density was too low, management was crude. At a glance, it was clear that the actual situation of this forest plot had absolutely nothing to do with Shiming's exaggerated claims of guaranteed profit. About an hour later, Jinzhong bluntly told Shiming that the actual value of this forest plot wasn't even 6 million, at most 5 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 166,000 USD. This statement immediately extinguished Shiming's dream of getting rich. On the way back, Shiming was unwilling to accept this, trying to salvage the situation, hoping Jinzhong would help sell the plot for at least 10 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 333,000 USD. But Jinzhong firmly refused and said this was a waste of his time. These words made Shiming feel insulted. Shiming thought, 20 million Taiwan dollars was what you said, 5 million Taiwan dollars was also what you said. In the end, not only did I not make a cent, but I also lost 1 million Taiwan dollars, approximately 33,000 USD. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Although Shiming outwardly tried to appear calm, rage was building inside. He told the driver that the road ahead was too congested and to take a smaller road instead. When the car reached near Zhongkang Village, Nanhua County, Shiming suddenly used a cable tie from the back seat to tightly strangle Jinzhong, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Jinzhong was completely unprepared and couldn't react in time. After a few minutes, he was motionless. Shiming then searched for and took Jinzhong's phone and related documents, dragged the body into the trunk, and ordered the driver to find a secluded place to dispose of it. Along the way, they saw an abandoned blue plastic container by the roadside. They stopped the car and tried to stuff Jinzhong into the container after removing his clothes. Just then, the sound of a motorcycle engine could be heard from afar. Farmer Yume arrived on her motorcycle. Seeing this scene, she suspiciously asked, "What are you guys doing?" Shiming quickly adjusted his emotions and said their friend was drunk and they were helping him out of the car to rest. As he spoke, he walked toward Yume, trying to calm her down. But he was very clear in his mind that this farmer who had suddenly appeared had seen something she shouldn't have seen. If he didn't quickly resolve this, the matter could be exposed. When Yume turned to leave, Shiming suddenly reached out from behind, hugging her tightly and strangling her neck. Yume resisted with all her might, but ultimately couldn't escape death. Shiming called the other two to help carry the victim's body into the car. They then drove a few hundred yards further to a secluded pond. They threw both corpses into the pond and found several rocks by the pond to weigh down the bodies, preventing them from floating to the surface. After handling everything, the three quickly drove away. This was the sequence of events as confessed by Wuzhe and Junji. Both tried to emphasize they didn't kill anyone, claiming they were only forced to help dispose of bodies, and said they were threatened by Shiming and forced to follow orders. Would the court believe their testimony? In court, main perpetrator Shiming argued that if the victim hadn't said insulting words during the transaction, he basically wouldn't have acted, claiming he only caused the tragedy in a moment of impulse. But the prosecution lawyer directly opened the forensic report, stating that the strangulation marks on the victim's neck went deep into subcutaneous tissue. This intensity absolutely could not be explained by so-called momentary impulse. Furthermore, the forensic examiner pointed out that Jinzhong still showed signs of life when thrown into the pond. This was clearly intentional murder. Wuzhe and Junji continuously protested their innocence when facing charges. They claimed to be threatened by Shiming, saying if they didn't obey him, they would also die. The prosecution lawyer rebutted, if they were truly afraid, why didn't they report to police? Why didn't they take the opportunity to escape? Additionally, according to forensic examination, the victims weren't dead when thrown into the water, only unconscious. The prosecution lawyer bluntly pointed out that both men's actions constituted voluntary conspiracy to murder. In the first trial, Shiming was sentenced to 2 death penalties for intentional murder. Wuzhe and Junji were each sentenced to life imprisonment for conspiracy to murder. However, Wuzhe and Junji refused to accept the verdict and appealed. They argued they didn't know the 2 people were still alive when disposing of bodies and insisted that if they had known the victims were still breathing, they absolutely wouldn't have participated. In April 2009, the High Court accepted their testimony, changing their sentences from life imprisonment to 3 years and 6 months. This sentence reduction caused great controversy. The victims' families were extremely upset upon hearing the news and immediately appealed. The appellate court changed the verdict again, restoring their life imprisonment sentences. On November 12, 2009, the Supreme Court rejected the defendants' appeals and the court ruling officially took effect. On April 30, 2010, Shiming was executed. This double murder case was also officially closed, and that's it for today's case. Thanks for watching and see you in the next videos.